Day one of the MLB offseason has passed, and there is already a ton of news and notes. Let's talk about it all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Welcome in, everyone. Hope you all had a fantastic Monday, are having a fantastic Tuesday. Today, we discuss day one of the Major League Baseball offseason. That was yesterday as you listen to this on Monday. When you're listening on Tuesday, I'm referring to the news that came out on Monday. Full disclosure, I'm recording this right before I eat dinner. It's pitch black outside. Thank you so much, Daylight Savings. It's really fantastic. But I'm just saying that, so as always, if there's, news breaks at 10:30 p.m. Monday night, then we'll talk about it on tomorrow's show. No big deal. Similar to the Dillon situation, which I recorded before it was announced. So we'll talk about that a little bit at the end of the show. We'll talk about Lou Whitaker being robbed from the Hall of Fame yet again for the, billionth time seemingly. But we'll spend most of the show talking about the news and notes from day one of the offseason. A lot of that revolves around opt-outs. There were a lot of opt-out decisions that were made on Monday. Now, as I record this, Jack Flaherty has still not made his decision on whether he will opt in or whether he will exercise his player option or not exercise his player option. Some correct terminology there. So we'll see what happens in that regard. If, like I said, if he does make a decision, we'll just talk about it tomorrow. But he has until Thursday to make that. I also have not seen anything yet on the mutual or team options, the club options that the Tigers have. We talked about all of those on yesterday's show, so you can go back and kind of listen to, where I'm feeling in that regard. Around the league, though, plenty of people, kind of the fairly obvious ones, got their decisions out of the way early, which makes sense. Flaherty, I would imagine, is, and maybe I just look really stupid and he makes his decision at, like 9 p.m. on Monday, and then it's like, haha, what an idiot. But I feel like he's a guy that would probably wait a little bit longer than everybody else. I don't think he'll take like right up until the deadline, but maybe let it breathe for a day just to see what the free agent market is going to look like, right? All of these decisions are so calculated and they're so intentional, right? Flaherty probably wants to see who the other free agent starting pitchers are going to be. And if he's one of the better ones, then he'll opt out and look for a multi-year deal. And if the free agent starting pitching market is incredibly deep and he's, the 30th option, well, then, maybe that gives him a little bit more incentive to opt in. And then obviously there's just the personal side of like, he clearly has stated a lot that he likes being a Tiger. He's enjoyed his time in the Tigers organization. Who's to say that he doesn't just come back for that reason? And then we talked about the qualifying offer wrinkle a little bit on yesterday's show as well. Outside of the Tigers organization, some notable players to opt out. Again, all of them fairly obvious. I think there's a couple of guys that maybe you could argue there's a little bit more of a conversation with, but like Pete Alonso opts out. Everyone knew he was going to opt out. He said at there was still a month left of regular season games, and maybe not a month. There was probably 2 weeks left, a week left of regular season games while the Mets were epically collapsing. I can say that because the Tigers also did. And a reporter was just like, "You're going to opt out, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." like on mic camera, like it happened in September. He was just like, "Yeah, I'm opting out." So like that's been known. The every year that Pete Alonso's available, some Tigers fans are like, "Oh, like this would be a great ad." Look, on paper, you're obviously right. Okay. Adding a guy with that kind of power and as a righty, two things that this team desperately wants to address and has wanted to address for the last couple of years, would be fantastic. Would be magical to add to the middle of this lineup. That being said, I just don't think there is room. And I in a perfect world, we have an owner that's really aggressive and spends a lot of money, then maybe. But like, given the fact that Illich probably gives Harris a winterly budget, an off-season budget of this is the amount of money I'm giving you to spend on players. Given that, not fact, but because I don't know it to be a fact, but given in my head that that is probably a likely scenario, I would imagine that the Tigers have a lot of other areas in their roster that they want to address more and of a higher priority than first base or designated hitter. Because those are the only spots in which Torkelson and Alonso could coexist on this roster. And I know some people are still like not big fans of Torkelson. I have voiced the shortcomings in his game a lot over the last, well, I guess his whole career since I've taken over as host of this show, however many years ago now. There are still plenty of things, even after this season, that I want to see him improve on. It's just that the only way, aside from just one being first base and one being DH, that they could really coexist is if you traded Torkelson. And I just don't find that to be super plausible. I guess not impossible. They could do it. But like, I don't know how much value he has. He had a sub 800 OPS and plays a mediocre at best defensive first base. There's not a ton of like value, I guess is the word. Positional value, certainly, in that. So like, I don't know. I don't know. I just don't think that that's a very plausible outcome. And then you just have the fact that, okay, you trade Torkelson, great. Well, now you're just replacing a right-handed power bat with a right-handed power bat. And obviously Alonso is better than Torkelson. Okay. I'm not saying that they're like of equal caliber. I'm just saying that you still would be looking around going, okay, well, I'd like another one of those. And you just shipped one out, one of the only ones you had. So I don't think that's a match, despite the fact that every offseason people want it to be one. Alex Bregman, however, on paper continues to be a match. And this is not like, I'm not as passionate about it this offseason as I was last offseason. But I would obviously welcome this with open arms. We've mentioned it before. He's a good defender at third base. The Tigers don't have a clear answer there. He has been a good hitter for a long time. He walks a lot. He doesn't strike out. He doesn't swing and miss. He addresses and he's a righty. He literally addresses everything the Tigers want to add this winter. So we'll see. He opted out. Everybody knew he was going to opt out. We've known he was going to opt out for a while now. And he's not opting out for AAV. If he wanted the highest possible AAV this year, he would have opted in because he's leaving $40 million on the table next year alone and 80 over the next 2 years. But clearly, he wants a longer-term contract. And hopefully that gets the Tigers in a little bit of that conversation again. I know not everybody is fully, on board the Bregman boat, some alliteration there, if you will, but And I get it. Like I'm not saying like the Tigers have to get Bregman or else this is a failure of an offseason and whatever. But like he would make the team better at a very apparent area of need. Honestly, multiple very apparent areas of need. So obviously, I would welcome it if they came to a deal. Let's talk about some other players that opted out that the Tigers may have their eyes on. Then we'll move on to Dillon Dingler winning Gold Glove, Lou Whitaker being snubbed of the Hall of Fame yet again, and some other news and notes from around baseball, all right after this. First, though, going to talk to you all about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the best. The NFL season is back. And honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, prices jumping at checkout. It can be very frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Game Time guarantee. So you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is actually the price you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games, Lions games, for as low as $100. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. And we, of course, will be back tomorrow as we continue talking about everything off-season from the Tigers' perspective. Today, we focus a little bit on some of the opt-outs that happened on Monday. Another big one out of the Mets side of things, the Mets camp, is Edwin Diaz opted out. That's a big one only because of name, not because of shock value. That's another one that we've known was going to happen for a while. That's also one where he opts out, I think, with full intention of still wanting to come back. Now, you do open the door a little bit, obviously, for other organizations to come in and make offers and whatnot, but I really think that he ends up back there. The Mets have made it very clear that they want Edwin Diaz back, and he has been very vocal about, like, I'm going to opt out just to kind of implore a multi-year deal to stay here. So it would surprise me, honestly, if he left. They're obviously willing to pay whatever his price tag is going to be as well. Cody Bellinger opts out. That is one where it's not surprising, but not one where I just expect him to go back to the organization he was already with. The Yankees could make a play. There's nothing to say that they don't. He had a pretty solid season there this year, but I think he's going to have a pretty decent market. The Tigers may even be included on that. I know there's been some people talking about improving in the outfield. Bellinger can give you that. He can also give you just straight up center field. The reason why, and I've said this a few times, so we won't spend too much time on it. I just doubt that this is on the Tigers' radar too much. Again, perfect world, maybe. But I really think that they are just going to rock with Meadows until he either proves that he can last at the major league level, in which case then it's just Parker Meadows for 2026, and that is just what it is, or he struggles and, 2-3 months into the season, they hand over the keys to Max Clark anyway. Like, I just can't imagine them investing long-term big money into a center fielder right now with who they have in the organization. Some others on the pitching side of things. Michael King declines his side of the mutual option. We've talked about a potential. We'll do a full player, what's the word? Player profile. Bang. Alliteration again, man. Just a great day. We'll do a player profile on a lot of free agents and kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive on their numbers and the fit and whatnot. But we've already talked a few times about the potential of Michael King and what his market could look like. I also think that Robert Suarez opting out, you kind of knew that this was going to happen, but his market will be super fascinating. this offseason. The only one, we'll end the opt-out talk on this, the only one that happened on Monday that genuinely, not even necessarily like was shocking, just I think there was a little bit more of a conversation with, was Ha-Sung Kim opting out of his 16 mil, I think, with the Braves. He just didn't hit very well and was coming off an injury. So I thought maybe he'd opt in. 16 mil for 1 year. He can play for presumably what you think would be a Braves team that will bounce back. A little bit more on them later as well as they hire a new manager. But a great point made by, just the writers at MLB.com that put out, kind of the piece with all of the updates on, who was opting in, opting out, exercising, not exercising, whatever. Their options, not like in the gym. And a good point that was brought up by whoever wrote Ha-Sung Kim's was that he might legitimately be one of the better shortstop free agents in baseball, despite the fact that he didn't hit very well. And we've seen what he can do with the glove. We've seen what he can do on the base paths. And we have seen some pretty solid offensive seasons. And he's another guy that puts the ball in play and doesn't swing and miss hardly ever. So I think there's a lot of value there. And I honestly respect and agree with the decision that he made there. Some other news that came out of Monday was the contemporary era ballot for the Hall of Fame voting this cycle. Had 7 or 8 players on it, none of which were Lou Whitaker. So Lou Whitaker will not even get a chance to be in the Hall of Fame. He will not even be on the ballot with a chance to be voted in this cycle, and he is not eligible again until 2028/2029. This continues to break my heart. Absolutely break my heart into a billion pieces. It is so criminal. I've said this for much longer than even like I've been the host of this show. This is legitimately one of the biggest wrongs in all of sports. Lou Whitaker is one of the greatest second basemen to ever step foot on a baseball field. There are a plethora of second basemen in the Hall of Fame who have worse career numbers, counting stats, WAR, whatever you want to use, than sweet Lou Whitaker did. I'm so happy that the Tigers at least retired his number and didn't go, you know what, we're not going to retire it because he's not a Hall of Famer. He deserves to be a Hall of Famer, and he deserves to have his number retired. And nobody should wear the number 1 in Detroit ever again because he's one of the greatest Detroit Tigers to ever rock an Old English D. For those who are from a generation that did not get to watch Lou Whitaker growing up, like myself, and obviously anybody younger, I was born in the late 90s, so it's kind of like I'm very close to the cutoff there. You also have to realize this dude was the Tigers' second baseman for like 2 whole decades. Not only are him and Trammell, arguably the best double play combination of all time, and for some reason half of that is in the Hall of Fame and the other half is not. He and Trammell were just staples. It was just, okay, like obviously they won their ring in 84 and they were both incredible that season. Trammell, I mean, arguably should have won MVP, but the MVP still went to a Tiger anyway. That is just such there's really, in my generation, there's nobody that's really even come close to that, just in terms of like the consistency and the mainstay. Like every year, you're going to get this level of production from Lou Whitaker, and he's going to be at second base from the late 70s to the mid 90s, man. Him and Tram both in that conversation, obviously. So I think, and obviously like him being an all-time great Tiger doesn't automatically make him a Hall of Famer. Him playing for 20 years doesn't make him automatically a Hall of Famer, but his numbers do. And I think that it is an absolute travesty that the Hall of Fame just continues to screw this up year in and year out. Don Mattingly is on this ballot like every single year. I have nothing against Donnie Baseball. Okay, put him in the Hall of Fame. That's great. He had a great career too. but he is on this contemporary ballot like all the time. And Lou Whitaker is on it like once every 4 years and then gets 2 votes, and then it just doesn't happen. And it's so criminal. So hopefully that is a right that is wronged in 2028, 2029 when he is eligible again. Dillon Dingler. And some positive news. Okay. Dillon Dingler won the first Gold Glove by a Detroit Tiger in almost a decade, and the first by a catcher in the Tigers organization for nearly 2 decades. We'll talk about that right after this. First, though, got to talk to you about our friends over at Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. So don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I've been using Prize Picks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game exciting. I like to just pick my favorite players, the big names out there as well, Mahomes, Steph Curry, you name it, and see how predictions play out. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup play. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, making us your first listen every day. Let's talk about Dillon Dingler. Dillon Dingler won the Gold Glove for the American League at the catcher position. It's a beautiful thing, man. It's an absolutely beautiful thing. I am so happy about this news. The first Tigers Gold Glove winner since 2016 when Ian Kinsler did it. I was a senior in high school. Okay, that was my senior year of high school, and I guess freshman year of college as well. It's just that's another lifetime ago. The fact that it's been that long is unreal to me. He's the first catcher since 2007. First Tigers catcher, obviously. There's a catcher that wins Gold Glove every year. First Tigers catcher since 2007, which was Pudge Rodriguez. He is now the 4th Tigers catcher in organization history to win a Gold Glove. The other 3 are the 3 most obvious candidates you can imagine. Okay? It's Bill Freehan, it's Lance Parrish, and it's Pudge Rodriguez. And now it's Dillon Dingler. That is pretty darn good company, if I do say so myself. Pudge and Parrish both won 3 with the Detroit Tigers. Pudge won 13 in his career, but 3 with the Tigers. Freehan won 5 with the Tigers. Dingler, in his first full major league season, now has his first and joins those other 3, now 4, in Tigers lore. There was some controversy online just around him winning it over Alejandro Kirk. I somewhat understand where, like, if I was a Blue Jays fan, maybe I'd be upset about that. Kirk was a better pitch framer and had a better blocks above average rating, which is those 2 things are the main argument there. And like those stats go into defensive runs saved, which Kirk was better in as well. I'll tell you, I thought it was going to Kirk. I thought Alejandro Kirk was going to win the award. I did not anticipate we would be having this conversation right now. But there's also a lot more that goes into the catcher position than just like defensive runs saved or just like, blocks above average or whatever. Framing's a big part of it. Dingler was a very good framer. He was not arguably the best in baseball like Alejandro Kirk was, but he was still a very, very good one. The thing that helps Dingler a lot here is he was arguably the best in all of MLB at throwing runners out. And Alejandro Kirk was middle of the pack in that regard. Dingler also, even if his blocks above average was not as high as Alejandro Kirk, which is an advanced stat measured by a lot of different things, Dillon Dingler straight up did not allow a passed ball the entire season. And I think that also is a testament to how good he still is defensively. But Dingler, caught stealing above average, was among the elite in baseball, and just in caught stealing percentage was quite literally, I think at the end of the season, tied for first, if not first place in that stat amongst qualified catchers. So I'm not mad at people who think it should have been Alejandro Kirk. To each their own. There's a million different ways you can interpret data. At some point, we're just kind of splitting hairs. Like that, they're both really good defensive catchers, and Alejandro Kirk was fantastic. But acting like this is some like egregious all-time robbery is also ridiculously absurd. Like Dingler was stellar. He was just behind Kirk in all of those other stats that Kirk was better in, and he was also better at him in other stats that go into that. So I think that this is really cool to just have a good defensive catcher again. Like it's been a while. It's been a long while. And for me, especially, I was a catcher my whole life. I geek out on, catcher defense. I think it's really cool to have that in the organization for, hopefully at least the next 5 years, if not longer. Other news around Major League Baseball, Gabe Kapler is now going to be the general manager of the Marlins. That's the Marlins. They never fail to just do the most like eye-popping thing at every possible decision. Every fork in the road, they go, well, we're not going to go left. We're not going to go right. What if we went and built a tunnel, an underground system to go under the fork, and everybody's like, why didn't you just like go left or go right? Like, why are you reinventing the wheel? That just feels like everything the Marlins have done for the last like 10 years. I have no resentment towards Gabe Kapler, by the way. I hope he does well. I hope the Marlins win 1 million games. That's great. It just is a weird hire to me. That's all. Speaking of weird hires, Adam Ottavino has approached the Colorado Rockies as becoming their president of baseball operations. I know what I just said about the Marlins. I'm so down, dude. I'm so down. This would be incredible, dog. Like, that would be so sick. I'm so down. I hope it happens. I really do. The rest of the I'm just going to keep calling it the New Era Committee because that's what it was called for like 20 years, and it's way easier than whatever the heck the new contemporary whatever committee is. The rest of the ballot, not including Lou Whitaker, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Carlos Delgado, man, Jeff Kent. We already talked about Mattingly, Murphy, Gary Sheffield, and then Valenzuela as well. Valenzuela will get in, should get in. I think the big conversation here is going to be Bonds and Clemens, two guys that if there was no steroids attached to their name, would have been unanimous first ballot Hall of Famers because that's how good their numbers are. But they do have that attached to both of their names. And so they're going to have to go through this. We'll see. I do think that this cracks eventually. I'm just not sure if it's this year or not. But I feel like I've also been saying that for about a decade. I do think that at some point this will finally stop and they will go, okay, enough time has passed. We're going to get some of these guys at least in the Hall of Fame. Gary Sheffield somewhat in that, breath as well. Again, Donnie Baseball. We'll see what happens with Jeff Kent. Gary Sheffield was kind of just like on the cusp for many, many years. Never got it, just barely missing out in a lot of those years. So we'll see if maybe he can get over the hump this year. A former Tiger for a short period of time, Gary Sheffield. Other news, this was the World Series Game 7 was the most watched World Series game since 2017. And had significantly, like almost 10 million more viewers than Game 7 of the NBA Finals. So the baseball is dead, crowd is crying and weeping as our sport continues to flourish here. Freddie Peralta stays with the Braves. That was a club option. Brandon Woodruff will be a free agent. Interesting. And AJ Minter will stay with the Mets. So some guys that either optioned in or their club optioned them in to the 2026 season. The last piece of news is the Braves have hired Walt Weiss as their man in charge. Snitker retiring from managing and will stay with the Braves organization. Weiss will take over as manager of the Braves. He's been the Braves bench coach for like 7 or 8 years. The only Tigers angle on this is that George Lombard, that was a huge potential suitor for the Tigers bench coach, George Lombard, and that is now crossed off the list. So we'll see. I'd imagine he's still going to be in play for plenty of other jobs. He's very highly regarded. But I do think that certainly eliminates a very, very big potential suitor in the George Lombard sweepstakes. So hopefully he stays with Detroit because I like him a lot and I think he's really good at his job. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We, of course, will be back tomorrow. We may have a Flaherty decision by then on his option. We also will have plenty of other news and notes from around baseball as we continue our off-season journey here. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.